Sick and tired of your love-hate relationship with wine?
Welcome to the Feel It Alcohol Free podcast. Hi, I'm Coach Ruby Williams.
And I'm Coach Susan Larkin.
We're two former wine lovers turned alcohol freedom coaches, exposing the lies about alcohol
and giving you, our listeners, the tools to break free so you can feel lit.
And when you're lit, you'll feel healthier, freer, and more in control of your life.
So relax, kick back, and get ready to feel lit alcohol free. Hello. Welcome back to the Feel Lit Alcohol Free podcast. We are so happy to be here with you today, and we have an amazing guest. We are so excited to welcome Rose Clark, and I'm going to read a little bit of Rose's bio.
Hi, Rose.
Hi. And we're going to jump right into hearing her amazing story and all the amazing things she is doing in this space. So Rose Clark grew up in 9 countries across the Americas. So you moved a lot.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, she's a mom of 5 children and a grandma to 3, and currently happily married to her wife of 13 years. And she's living in a small town in Texas where they are raising their grandson and a foster son. Rose started her career in law enforcement at the age of 40, and she is certified as a hostage negotiator, mental health peace officer, basic instructor, field training officer, and currently works as a corporal in the patrol division of the sheriff's office.
Wow.
It's an amazing career starting at the age of 40, which I want to jump into when we're talking to you. So she is into health, fitness, and meditation. And Rose is in the process of writing her life story. She also runs a local grief group called Collateral Beauty. And she's an advocate for overdose awareness and speaks and shares openly about her sober/grief journey. I love the name of your group.
Thank you.
Collateral Beauty. So wonderful. So just tell us, other than your esteemed bio, tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about your sobriety journey.
Okay. Well, like you said, I got into law enforcement at the age of 40. After I got divorced and my children were older, I decided to hey, it's my turn to do something with my life. And, for myself, I used to manage a foster teenage girls program for like a nonprofit when I was raising my kids. And I just kind of was led into that field. Put myself through the academy, and the rest is history.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was quite a challenge, but I feel grateful that I did it now. I love doing it, and it's been very rewarding. I got sober in response to my grief, right? And to how I was dealing with my grief. I don't know if I should kind of give a little backstory on that. Is that okay? Or
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So like I said, I'm a mother of 5 children. My oldest daughter, Catherine, she struggled with mental health, and then was subsequently led to addiction later in life for her. She was a beautiful and incredible human, and she had 2 children. I fought alongside with Catherine when she became addicted to heroin and methamphetamines. And of course, as a parent, that's just like your worst nightmare, right? You're like, oh my God, what? And I wasn't educated enough that I wish that I had been more educated in that field, but with mental health and addiction, which I am now. But I fought alongside with her and, in and out of the rehabs and doing all the things that a parent does as a mother to loving an addict. And so her battle was very fierce and short-lived, about 2 years long. And then in November 19th of 2017, I got the call that no parent ever wants to get. And the homicide detective called me and said, your daughter's overdosed. She was dumped in an alley. And we found her 12 hours later, and it's just like, what? Like, I get emotional talking about it, but of course, all my hopes and dreams, like I believed she was going to be the one. Oh, she's going to make it. I know she's going to be the one that makes it. And to just how all of that shattered and ended like that. And with that, was just, my world went black, right? I lost all hope in life. And I had only recently started my career in law enforcement, so it was all just a lot to take in. And so even though I've been drinking for 20 years, I mean, it was just part of my life, right? Like going out, happy hour, the usual drinking. After my daughter died, it became my lifeline. I started to, that's how I started to deal with my grief. It was so incredibly painful, right? To lose a child. I never could have imagined the pain that it was, not only emotionally, but physically too. And I had to be a high functioning person still. So like every night I just drank until I basically drank myself to pass out. I called it going to sleep, but really my wife's like, you passed out. It sounds classier when you say I went to sleep. But like, that's just what I started doing. And then I would wake up and have to go do all the things and be superwoman. And so the doctor prescribed me Adderall, which I became addicted to as well. I had never been diagnosed with ADHD or anything like that. It's just, I started taking it because it gave me fake joy, and fake energy and everything else. And then I had so much anxiety, not only from the grief, but from the Adderall, that I started vaping and smoking. And it just became like this insane cycle that I was in, right? And nobody around me except for my closest people knew that I was really actually imploding, like I was not okay. And as an officer, you're not going to just be like, I'm not okay. You know what I mean? You're supposed to be the strong person and the person that's saving everybody else. And right now I'm not doing too good. And I continued in that cycle for almost 3 years. I did remove myself from the street for a while and went to work at a school because I needed time to process my grief, and I knew that I wasn't in a good place. And I started to feel physically like not okay. I started to get worried. Like I started to look things up, like how much is too much to drink, and all the things that we start doing, because I started physically like feeling like something bad's going to happen. I'm drinking too much. I'm smoking. I'm doing all these things. And I just knew that I couldn't justify that to my children, to tell them like, hey, sorry, I didn't make it, because I didn't care enough to stop what I was doing. All I cared about was my own pain. And, I just to make it shorter, I went outside one day and I said, Catherine, I don't want to make it. I don't want to live. Like I wasn't suicidal. I just didn't care anymore, and I just said, but I know I have to. I have to make it. I mean, I have your kids to raise and I've got other kids and you have to step in. I mean, no one else was coming to save me, I had to save myself, and I just asked her to help me. And, I speak to Catherine now. It's kind of like my higher power, anyway. So then the next day, I really didn't know what I was going to do. I had no plan, but I said, I'm going to start some sort of health journey. I'm just going to do something to make myself get healthy. I don't want to keep living if it's going to be like this. It is miserable, and I don't want to do it. So I'm going to find a way. And I went plant-based from one day to the next. The next morning I said, that's it. I'm starting my health journey. I, for some reason, decided to go that direction, and I started to feel a little bit better. I still continued to drink because I never imagined not drinking. And I just couldn't, the concept of actually quitting alcohol didn't even cross my brain, except for 2 weeks into the plant journey, the health journey. I was like, how can I keep pouring alcohol into my body and I'm over here trying to eat healthy? Like it's not even makes sense, And I'm somebody that's really practical. I'm a Taurus. I'm a practical. I don't, live in these alternate realities. I just like, that doesn't make sense to me. So I remember the night that I think I was washing dishes, and I was telling myself in my mind, I got to stop drinking. If I say it out loud, I'm going to have to do it because I'm an extremist. I have no balance. That's why I, drinking too much. So I said, I just like pondered it, and finally I spit it out to my wife. I said, I'm done drinking. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I started crying because I was like, what did I just do? Like, how am I going to cope without drinking? It's the way I relax. It's the way I do anything, but I knew that was the only way. I knew that as long as I continued to drink, that I would never be able to live in the reality of facing life on life's terms and processing that my daughter was gone. This numbing thing was just not doing anything for me. I needed to process it. I needed to work through it, and I needed to heal. And 3 days later, I stopped smoking. So that's kind of,
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just jumped off all in at once. I had no plan. No, I didn't join a program or anything, but I just started meditating and exercising. I had never meditated in my life. I wasn't a huge exercise person, but I just knew that I had to do something, a routine, right? That would keep something to keep me on track, to be able
Mm-hmm.
to help me. And every day I started writing down day one, day two, day three, and I see the numbers getting growing. And for me, that really worked. And I started to, in meditation, connect with my daughter. I set up this space that was just for me, and I would go in here every day for healing. And I would cry and I would allow myself to feel the pain and all the regret that I had for, the mistakes that I had made with my daughter and for the self-sabotaging that I did to myself, and I had to work through those things and I had to forgive myself. And every day I started to do that, my life started to change. And I started to actually, instead of focusing on the loss, I started to focus on all the time I got with my daughter. Like, oh my God, I got almost 25 years with her. And she left me
Right.
these two beautiful children, and I got to be her mom. Like, she picked me, even if it was for a short time. I just shifted my thinking. So that's kind of
Oh my gosh,
how
so
it's been four and a half.
incredible.
Yeah.
It's been
Yeah.
4.5
I feel
years.
so grateful. Yeah, 4.5 years.
Oh my
And it just
God.
keeps getting better and better, and I've been able to, because of knowing like the darkest place that I've ever known and to coming to this, I find so much joy in my everyday now. I just feel so grateful for sobriety. I know that without quitting alcohol, I would have never been able to get to this place, of actually finding
Yeah.
gratitude and meaning and letting go of guilt, because I felt guilty that I was finding myself for the first time, and I had sobriety and I had these things that Catherine had fought for herself, and I wasn't able to save her. And as a parent, you're like, you have one job, and then you can't save them, but yet because in her death I've all these things have happened to me, and my life is completely turned around, and now even for the better. It's hard to justify that in your mind, right? Like, you're like, at what cost? But I felt
Mm-hmm.
my daughter just giving me permission to you're doing it for us, Mom. You're like, you're doing it for us. Sorry, I get emotional, but
Oh,
and it just
Oh,
it just keeps me going, every day, to keep doing it, to honor her.
yeah.
So
And there are so many people that are in a similar situation that are drinking because of a loss of a loved one or grief. And it's so true that drinking just keeps you stuck, numbing. And the only way is to move
yes.
through it, to go through that healing, that process. I love that you listened to your intuition, Rose, and
mhm.
leaned on your daughter and got to the place of gratitude. What a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you talked about self-compassion and forgiving yourself and how that,
Mm-hmm.
and we talk about that on the podcast all the time, how that's like the secret sauce of just the release, right? Into a place of acceptance, and completely changes your perspective. So that's beautiful. And I love that you're
Absolutely.
able to connect with her. And I know a lot
I
of times you
know.
put in
Yeah.
posts like for the sake of Catherine, or
Yeah, for the love of
right.
Catherine.
For the
Yeah.
love of Catherine. Yes, I love
Yeah.
that. I love when I see that. I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So beautiful. Well, tell me, so
Thank you.
what is this? So from this, you've created a grief group, which you've called Collateral Beauty, which is a beautiful
Yeah.
name. So tell
Something,
us about that. That's an
I'm sorry.
in-person local.
Yeah. Yes. So right now it's a local group, which I plan on expanding. I want something to be able to do, on a larger scale, because I've had a lot of people ask me. But I started it because I knew how I felt, especially early in my grief. My daughter's been gone for 7 years now, but especially early in my grief, I felt very isolated. I felt very alone. People get tired of hearing you talk about your loss, or your child. They're kind of like, okay, we've been talking, the world moves on and you still stay in this space. Your kid is still gone, you know what I mean? Or whoever your loved one is. And so, and people tend to say things, even if they mean well, that are just don't make you feel good. You know what I mean? Like, oh, they're in a better place, or, they're always just saying things that to you are just like, it's so insensitive, but they mean well. And so I wanted to start something where, people could just be who they were. I know I went to a grief group early on, and it was religious based. And for me, I just wasn't in a space of being happy. Like, they were so happy. And I was just like, I'm out of here. I can't do this, and I was not in a place of receptive to anything, and I just wanted to make a place where anybody can come, no matter where you are in your grief, what your religious preference is, any of it. You can just come and feel like you're not alone. And I also wanted to, because I'm in a different space in my grief now, and 7 years down the road, I wanted to offer them hope that there can be life, and there can be a good life, and there can be joy again. You can find joy again, but it's a choice, and so I try to lead by example in some of the things that I've done. And that's kind of why I started the group. So,
wow, that's great. I really love that so much. And I know you're in some of the sobriety spaces that I'm in. So even though you didn't have support when you were getting sober, how do you feel like being part of the sober community is helping you stay sober? Or I know you contribute too, because you speak a lot, because like Ruby said, a lot of times people, their accelerator event to propel them from whatever social drinking to over drinking is because of a loss of a loved one. Sometimes, right? And I know that you've spoken in some of these sober spaces as well about your journey.
Yeah, I think it's important to find community. I live in a really small town, so there's not like a whole lot of community that's involved. So I got online and joined a bunch of sober groups, especially early on in sobriety. I flooded myself with podcasts, quick lit books, things like that, just to help me, because I am in an isolated area. And that has been so helpful. And just to share my story, I kind of like journal out loud, and, I probably share a lot, but for me, it's just kind of like writing a diary. But I'm excited about recovering out loud, because I've had a lot of people reach out to me that feel inspired by my story. And so for me, it's healing at the same time as I, share my experiences. And
yeah. It is. It really is, to share. And that's even on the podcast, when we talk about things, it just reinforces, why we're doing this,
Right. Because some people can't recover out loud, it's too hard for them to speak out, but they can see other people doing it, like you guys and me. And I think it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, I'm going to come back to Catherine, but did you want to show a picture of her? She's so beautiful, and I know that you have her there.
I've got a huge picture of her right here. I don't know if you can see it. Can you? Can you see it? No. Or if not,
yes.
I'll get my one. Sorry.
No, that was beautiful.
I got pictures with her and her children too, so that they can see it and keep her memory alive.
Wow.
But
yeah.
Well, you're not alone in being a parent that is dealing with children with addiction and to meth and heroin. It's very common, actually, which is sad, right? I mean, we have it in my family, and it's just, it is really hard to deal with. It is really something that, like, you don't feel like you're ever doing a good job, and it's just really hard. What would you share with other mothers that have adults or adolescent children struggling with addiction from your experience?
Really good question.
Well, it is a good question. First of all, I'm going to say, while there's life, there's hope. There's always hope, and I always just say that to any parent struggling. While there's life, there is hope. And as long as they're, breathing and moving, then don't give up on them. Educate yourself on mental health and addiction and how it's so much intertwined and correlated. I come from a generation, being 50, that we didn't really address when I was younger, like depression or things like that. You just could work through everything. Like, there wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go take a time out for my depression. Like, you just had to keep working and doing all the things, So I didn't have as much compassion or understanding, I don't think, even as much as I tried to understand Catherine. I struggled with, like, why can't you just do better? Why your kids? Like, what about your kids? And things like that. And sometimes we can tend to not understand them as well, But if I had known more about, like I said, mental health and how addiction works in the brain and everything, I just feel like I could have done better with that. I do believe that I did everything I could do, but that would have been really helpful to have a better understanding of that. And just, don't stop, picking them up when they need to be picked up, or buying them groceries. Like, my daughter was homeless towards the end of her journey, because I couldn't have her living here. But, I picked her up and I fed her and I clothed her and I gave her the necessities, and then I dropped her off where she wanted to be dropped off. And that's not always possible, but I don't regret those things. I don't regret that I had those times to give her a hug when she was screaming at me, and, holding her hand in the car when she was just so high, and, just things like that, that I'm thankful that I had, and I think it's important to just continue to love on them and do everything you can. It's such a hard journey to be on, to love an addict, to watch them being, destroyed by their own addiction, and you can't save them. And it's hard to be patient, and it's hard to know where to draw the line. And it seems like, you can do all these things and they won't work, or they will. But I think my biggest message is, while there's life, there's hope. And
never give up.
Offer.
Never give up.
Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful. I'm going to pass that along to our family members that are struggling with this, for sure. Yeah, it is really hard. Probably the hardest thing. Yeah. So.
And there's a lot of stigma attached to addiction too, and parents don't want, let's not talk about it, or, but we need to talk about it. We need to be open about it. And it's just, it doesn't discriminate. Catherine had a very relatively normal life. I'm a police officer. Like, there's just, it just doesn't discriminate. And
right.
It can happen to anybody.
And I went to outpatient rehab, and it wasn't just about alcohol. It was any kind of addiction, drug related. So I met people, I used to think, I'm alcohol. That's like, and the bad drugs are, the meth and the heroin. But I met these wonderful people, and they're just like me. And that's what I understood is so clearly, is that addiction doesn't discriminate either. There isn't like good or bad, but it's all, it's looked down upon. But I changed my view. And I think that was really important for me to actually be around this and realize, and addiction can move from something light or lighter, like a pot addiction, to then all of a sudden heroin. And the brain is such a complicated organ that I just don't have the judgment. And then I read the book Dopamine Nation, and it even made me like, it went into all the other addictions like sex addiction and gambling. And I just have so much compassion for all the types of addiction, and it's not some are better than others, or, so I just want to share that I have really transformed my view.
I love that. Yeah. And I think it's important to keep an open mind on recovery, because I know even when Catherine was, I was like, you're either sober or you're not, I never was open-minded about that there was other ways to sobriety, or like medically assisted, or, just different things that there is now that I've learned since her passing, and I think it's important to be open to all different possibilities of recovery for your person,
Right.
So,
harm reduction.
Yeah. Harm reduction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And our methodology really, you continue on with the behavior and just start to learn and have self-compassion and grace and get curious. So it's not about like all or nothing. So I really like what you just said, Rose. That really resonates.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. Well, I wanted to kind of, as in our little badass woman theme, kind of touch a little bit on like you changing careers or going into this career of law enforcement at the age of 40. You said, I went through the academy. That must have been hard. I mean, physically hard.
It was hard. It was a lot hard. Like I said, I've been doing just a lot of different jobs, raising kids with my primary thing, so like I just worked whatever different jobs. And so I never really had a career in mind. And then I think I met a female that was a police officer, and it was kind of like it sparked something. And I was like, I could do that. And when I moved out to this town, they were hiring, and I said, all right, F it, I'm going to go do this. And I went and tested out with all these young kids, and I was like, this is embarrassing. And, they have this written test where you have to do first, and all my stuff is good except math. I'm just, not great at. And so I was like, okay, I didn't test that high, on the math portion. So it kind of lowered my overall score. So I was so embarrassed. And they would put these jerseys on you, numbered of where you scored on your written test. So like number 1 to, 25. It was so humiliating, right? And I'm out there, this old lady with number like 11 or something. I was just mortified. I was like, I can't even believe it. Why am I doing this? And as the number 1s and the 2s started dropping off in the physical thing, and we had to do a 1.5 mile run and push-ups and sit-ups and all the things that came along, they started dropping off. And I was like, hey, my son told me before I did it, he's like, as long as your feet are still moving, then you're fine. And so that 1.5 miles was starting to get long for me at the time. And I was like looking down and my feet were still moving because it was a time thing, And I was like, okay, I'm okay. And yeah, I was the only person that got hired. Woo! Out of all the people that tested out, they only hired me. Yeah.
That's
awesome.
Oh, yeah. I got on the ground after they passed the final thing, and they said, Clark, you made it. And I just cried, honestly, because I was like, oh my God, because, a lot had happened in my life, and just to get to a place of like, okay, I can do this. And, honestly, it's been great to get into law enforcement late in life because I just feel I have so much more life experience, compassion for people from a lot of the things that I've been through. Even I carry Catherine's picture in my patrol car, and when I have to make arrests on things like with drugs and stuff like that, that it's so hard for me because I know that jail is not the answer for addicts, but sometimes you have to do the job can kind of conflict with some of my emotions. At the same time I have to do it. I'll always talk to them about it, and I'll be like, listen, it's either jail or you're going to die. Like I give them my whole mom speech. I show them the picture of Catherine, I carry these little bracelets that say for the love of Catherine on them and, just kind of overdose awareness bracelets. And sometimes I'll be like, I'll put one on their wrists, and I'll be like, if you want to get help when you get out, then give me a call or, I'll try to. And I've had people call me later on 5 years down the road and said, I got sober when I got out because I got sober in jail and then I got out and I'm still sober. And I just wanted you to know that you're sharing your story and doing it.
Wow.
So, for me, that's just like such an impact, it warms my heart. And so I'm always wanting people to make it no matter what. And I carry homeless bags in my patrol car because my daughter was homeless at the end. And so I always want to just make sure if I encounter anybody, and the sheriff allows us now to put them in all the patrol cars. And so that's pretty cool. And I get to do that as well. And I just, so it's little parts of her that I get to carry with me everywhere into the job. And
so
I'm really
cool.
good at the job.
You're badass.
And I love it. Total badass. Thank you. It's been cool.
It is, obviously the government and agencies and need to do more with mental health and understanding addiction. But, it comes down to, it's this grassroots, it's sort of like the sobriety movement, right? And alcohol and ending the stigma there. It's people doing this. It's you sharing your story. It's you going out there and touching lives and giving bracelets and giving homeless packets. And all of us, if we all did that, if we all,
right.
You know what I mean? Then things would change as well.
I
so
agree.
It has to be a person to person thing too, as well as.
Absolutely.
I think we're going to rise up versus it coming from the top down.
Absolutely.
I love that, Susan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
it's happening in the sobriety movement. Like, yes, finally doctors and people are coming out and saying, yeah, alcohol is addictive or alcohol is bad for your health, even though they've been gaslighting us, because more and more people are speaking out about it. And it is, I think, coming from the bottom up, and
I completely agree.
So
I
cool. And we're a part of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel very cool being sober. I'm not gonna lie. I feel very cool about it.
We're the cool one. We're the cool kids, right?
We
Susan,
are.
that's your friend.
Yeah.
We're the cool kids now.
All the
That's
cool
what
kids are
we're
doing
saying.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I feel
I do
empowered.
too. Well, every person we have on the podcast, of course, agrees. But also, I don't know that I've ever talked to somebody who is sober, and we say this a lot, who's like, yeah, it's okay. It's like everybody who's sober is like, it's amazing. And so we just want to keep getting that message out to the people who are like, well, that might be amazing for you, but I don't think it's going to be amazing for me. And it's like, yes, it is.
Right.
I dare you, So
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, it just keeps getting better because you learn how to work through things in a sober way because alcohol's off the table, right? So you're just like, okay, I got
Yeah.
to learn coping skills that are healthy or some way to deal with the things. And so I think that's been such a game changer for me
That
just
makes
to
you
learn how
actually.
to. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so this is the time, and speaking of feeling amazing, this is the time in our podcast where we always ask our guests, what do you do in your life that helps you feel lit?
Well, first of all, being sober makes me feel lit because my emotions are just like they're chill now. Like I'm not up and down and all around. I'm like I'm a little bit good all of the time, and that's just waking up to that joy every day just feels incredible for me. And I love lifting weights. That makes me feel really strong and lit. It's
Oh.
one of the things that's my favorite thing to do. Yeah, in
Cool.
the morning I get up at 4 in the morning and knock it out and then just enjoying being around my children. They've been taking me on trips and I'm sober and I'm just enjoying all of these. They took me to Washington for my 50th birthday and we stayed in a yurt and it's just finding all these adventures and realizing how I'm happy and I'm not drinking, and just joy in the little things. Like that's what keeps me lit. So
Yeah. The joy in the
I
little
don't,
things, adventure,
yeah.
and I do love weightlifting too. Especially women over 50.
Mhm.
Yes.
Strong.
Yeah. I just am feeling so good.
Yeah.
I was sharing just with, I was at USU's at somebody recently. I'm like, yeah, I'm getting guns on the top, but I still have my bat wings on the bottom. But like, that's me at 50 and I'm okay with it,
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's
It's
really
fun.
fun to be strong. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
I
you
love
want
it
to
when
get
people are like,
stronger as you're getting older.
like, I got it.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I'll just tell you, Rose, I'm 54. The 50s are
Wow.
the bomb, the best, especially being alcohol free. It's like the best decade so far ever. Yeah.
No
I love
doubt. No doubt. You look amazing. Your skin's so good and everything. You look beautiful. Both
Yeah.
of you.
That's all.
You too. You're glowing.
Thank you.
I'm not telling you how old I am.
From the inside.
I'm older.
I turned 50. Yeah, I'll be 51 this year. I turned 50 last year, but yeah, it's still great. You guys look beautiful. And I just really feel that it's that inner joy that just starts coming out, and also the physical, of course, starts manifesting. But it's just, I wish I just discovered this sooner. That's all. I'm like, why didn't I discover this sooner? This is so cool.
I know.
Well, you discovered it when you were supposed to, is what I say.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I was ready. So.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes. Everybody's timing is different. So, but getting the message out there so that more and more people have the information and can be set free, really, and especially if they're in a position where they're using alcohol as a coping mechanism for something like grief, because not only is it going to help you mentally, and it'll also help and physically and being sober, but it'll help you manage and move through that grief in a more positive way.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
in a healing way. So where can people find out more about you if they want to connect with you? We'll put it in the show notes, but
I mean, I'm on TikTok. I'm on as Corporal Clark. I'm on Facebook as Rose Clark, and I'm on Instagram as I think maybe Corporal_Clark or something like that.
Okay.
Websites or anything big yet, but I'm working on it. I feel like it all's coming together as it should. And
and you're writing a book, so that's in the future, right? The book.
I'm writing my life story down, and I'm hoping to get it into some sort of book. I have most of my life story down. It's just a matter of kind of it all together. But yes,
that's
I'm
awesome.
excited about that.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, we will put that in the show notes. I'm sure there'll be listeners who will connect with your story and be blessed and given hope.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rose.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. It's been a pleasure.
It's been so nice getting to know you and getting to hear a little bit more about Catherine. And
thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for giving me the opportunity.
Okay, well, if this is the end, so we're going to say goodbye. And we hope that you will join us in our Facebook group, as I saw that you joined, Rose. So that's another place that you can connect with Rose, is in our Facebook group, the Feel Lit Alcohol Free closed Facebook group. So we'd love to see you over there. And
absolutely.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Feel Lit Alcohol Free Podcast. Do you have a question you'd like us to answer on the show?
All you need to do is head over to Apple Podcasts and do 2 simple things. Leave a rating and review telling us what you think of the show. And in that review, ask us any questions you have about breaking free from wine or living an alcohol-free lifestyle.
That's it. Then tune in to hear your question answered live.
And remember, do something today that will help you feel lit.